Ralph, how old are you?
I'm, I will be 92 in July.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. All right.
What do you do, memories?
Yeah, so it's Memoirs of World War II, and we interview World War II veterans like yourself, and we create short films on YouTube.
Hmm.
Yeah, we want to educate the younger generations so that they can hear the stories of the war from the men and women who experienced it.
Huh.
Yeah, so, all right, well, I'm just going to ask you some questions and we can just talk like we're sitting here having coffee.
Okay.
Okay? Ralph, why don't you tell me your full name and what branch of the military you served in?
Okay, Ralph Eugene Lentz, and served in the Navy in San Diego, and my rate was Seaman First Class.
What were you doing before the war and what prompted you to get involved?
Well, I was in high school. I think when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, I was in the 8th grade getting ready to go into high school, and was wondering at that time if the war would be over by the time I graduated. What else?
Not so much, right? So did you enlist or you got drafted?
Yeah, I enlisted. I knew I'd be drafted, so I just went ahead and enlisted. And I enlisted in the Navy.
Tell me a little bit about your basic training for the Navy.
Okay. We in Kansas knew that the war was going on. We didn't see a whole lot of evidence of it. We'd see troop trains come through every now and then. And there was rationing of tires and sugar and a lot of things. But when I arrived in San Diego, you knew the war was going on because there's camouflage over the streets, and the buildings were painted in such a way that you couldn't, from the air, you couldn't tell what they were. And then at night, when I was in my barracks, I could look out the window and see the tracer bullets coming out of the guns, practice firing. And you really knew that the war was on.
What was your role in your unit?
My role really wasn't any different than anybody else in my company. One thing that was different to me was the fact that we had to get out and march as a company. And I think we marched about every day, and I really enjoyed that. I had been in band and marched in band, but this was a little bit different because they were marching in competition with other people. And we won the march for our company in our barracks.
Did you ever deploy overseas?
What?
Where'd you go to, did you deploy overseas? When did you deploy overseas?
I didn't. I would go out every day and look at the muster and see if my name was on it to go overseas, and I felt like I was fortunate and never did show up on that. And then after we were in boot camp, no, while we were in boot camp, I had to take fire training where you could go in burning buildings and help put out the fire. And it was at that time that I heard that they had dropped the atomic bomb, and soon the war was over. But that didn't mean I was going to get discharged. I had to stay until all the men were back home from overseas.
was it like when you finally got to get discharged?
Well, it was entirely different then because I spent all my time in San Diego, and that's where I met my wife. Went out to USO one time, and I saw her and danced with her, and we kind of carried on a conversation while we were dancing, and then the music stopped, and pretty soon it started up again, and I started dancing with her, and I started talking to her, and she said, "What are you talking about?" And I said, "Well, I was just talking to you about this," and she said, "Oh, you must have been with my twin sister." So that's how that started. But before I left, why, we had decided we were going to get married, and Arlene was from Lyons, Kansas, and I was from Hutchinson, Kansas, and we met in San Diego. We probably never met back here because I had no reason to go to Lyons, and she didn't have any reason to come to Hutchinson, but we met out there. And then before we had decided to get married, why, I had to be discharged, and I had to be discharged in Oklahoma City because I was closer to Hutchinson. I really wanted to be discharged at San Diego, but I couldn't. So they shipped me to Norman, Oklahoma. I was discharged in Norman, and before I left, we had decided that we would meet in Phoenix. That's where her parents lived. And so after my discharge, I got a ride to the outside of Oklahoma City and was going to thumb my way back to Phoenix, and the bus passed me that would be going to Phoenix, Arizona, while I was standing out there. But I beat him to Phoenix by hitchhiking. So we met there, and we were there for a while with her folks, and then we went back to San Diego, and I spent a few days there again, and then started back home to Hutchinson and hitchhiked back there. In those days, people were picking up servicemen just to help them out. But shortly after the war was over, they started quitting that. But I was fortunate enough to be able to get rides. So I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. That's wonderful. I love it. I'm a twin, so I get it.
Oh, you are?
I
Oh.
am. Yeah. Ran into those situations.
Well, I just lost my twin in
You're a twin as well?
No, I just lost my wife.
Your wife, okay.
In September, and then her sister died a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
So how long were you married then? That's
71 years.
71 years. That's wonderful.
And he's a result of that.
Right. That's awesome. Christian, any other questions? No. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. We got all of your contact information. I really appreciate it.
Oh, okay.
And you did great for this being your first time.